Okay, my name is Billy Howard.
My name is Mary Jo Reimer.
I was born in Jacksonville, Florida. Grew up in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, in a small beach town, and had a nice childhood. I'm the youngest out of 5 boys, and my parents took very good care of us. And I can remember growing up. The town I grew up in Florida was a very big tourist town at the time, and it was great. Had a boardwalk and one and only public swimming pool. One of my brothers was lifeguard, and of course I got to swim anytime free. And he would take me to the boardwalk on Saturday nights and spend all his salary on me so I could play the games and ride the rides. And I like where I grew up. It's changed a lot in over 20 years since I left to go, almost 20 years ago. But I basically had a very happy childhood. Mentally, I thought probably someday, yes, I would come down with AIDS or ARC, because I've lived in LA 10 years this September, and I used to party real hard on weekends, and I've worked at 2 major clubs in Hollywood. That my weekends were from Friday night until Sunday night or Monday morning, straight through, nonstop. And I was tested positive over 2 years ago, and then I took the test again in February of '85, and it came back positive again. And I was depressed about that for a couple of weeks, and I just got used to the idea, and that's when I really started thinking seriously about okay, let's really get into safe sex. And plus I had gotten clean and sober. I'm on a 12-step program, and I thought my life was really starting to come together, and my sobriety has been great, or else I never would have even gotten involved with the project. I would still be into myself instead of wanting to help others. And I got involved with APLA, and I myself have had 3 clients. No, I'm not angry at all. Being a buddy really helped me an awful lot, because I was with my first buddy. I saw him take his last breath, and we developed a very loving, very close relationship. And my second buddy and I released each other because it just wasn't working out between the 2 of us. My third buddy died in May, and we had known each other since the late 70s. But being a buddy taught me a lot. It's amazing what the dying can teach us. And I'm not afraid. If I died tomorrow, I feel like my life has been good, especially in my sobriety. And you mentioned a walking time bomb. No, I don't feel like that. I do feel like I'm a telephone with the whole put on hold, because I have to wait until something sets in, or one more of the diseases sets in, infections, before I am diagnosed with AIDS. I wanted to do something with the project. I knew very well the first woman who actually had the first party to get APLA off the ground. And in fact, she just died last October or November. And I was at the party at her house to raise money to try to get the project started. To me, being a buddy is being a friend. In the buddy training, they do an awful lot of talk on active listening, which is important because you're there for them, you're not there for you. And it's amazing what goes through their heads, because now I am in the same place, and I know that my buddy, she's very good at active listening, and to be a friend, because a lot of people that are diagnosed with AIDS or ARC, they lose their families, they lose friends because of the fear. I partied very hard, and I don't regret it. I had a good time.
Even now,
I don't regret it. I don't regret it. A lot of people that I know that have died, a lot of people I know that are now clients with the project, we used to be out there together on weekends, partying, drinking and drugging and having it was a fun time. I don't regret the past. I don't. My parents, who I have visited very recently for 2 weeks in Florida, the night I got home, it felt like it was all I could do to get a hug from my mother, and it just like, it hurt at first. And you don't contact AIDS or ARC by breathing the same air. I know what to do. I mean, I get upset if someone goes to drink out of a glass that I have just drank out of. I mean, I know what to stop, but there's so many wrong ideas on how it's contacted. It's sexually. For me, I know it was sexually because I've never been into needles. But there's still so much knowledge that needs to be learned out there, especially to me among junior and senior high school teenagers, because I've heard comments from them on street corners, and they don't believe in safe sex. They don't want any part of it, and safe sex can be fun too. I mean, there's a lot to be learned, and I try not to get angry about it when I hear other people's comments that aren't practicing safe sex, but it's their life. And as for me, I know I have to practice safe sex because I could get reinfected with someone that's positive, and I don't want that.
A very, very dear friend of mine was diagnosed in April of '85, and I was the first person he called. I mean, the bottom of his world dropped out. So we went out and we talked, etc., and at the time, he was very, very depressed. He knew better than I, really, what was happening. And by the way, he was a gay man. And I remember one of the things I said to him is, Pat, I'll be there for you. I promise. I will be there for you. And making a long story short, he got that opportunistic disease in March of '86. And it was a downhill struggle. He died in November of '86. When he became very ill, I was very disturbed because all of a sudden he was very, very alone. He lived alone. All of a sudden friends disappeared. I mean, it's like he was all by himself. And he called AIDS Project LA for help. Well, they have such a backlog, they couldn't get a buddy assigned to him right away. And I was frantic. I wanted to help my friend, so I got a book that APLA puts out. And I read the book. And in there they say you can't get it from hugging somebody, you can't get it from this and that and the other. And I knew they wouldn't publish material like that if it wasn't valid information. And of course I cared a whole lot about my friend. So I helped with some other friends organize our own support group, plus APLA then did assign him a buddy. And it was through this 6 months approximately of time where Pat went through all these agonies, if you will, and I became close friends with his buddy. I'm getting very long-winded. At any rate, as a result of that, like Billy said, you learn so much from the dying. It was just such a phenomenal experience that after Pat died, it was like a given that I would get involved with the project. I took the training session that they offer for the buddy program, and then afterwards they give you a test, etc., etc. It's quite a process. And then they assigned Billy to me as my client. I am a straight woman, and they do look at me strangely. In fact, it's very interesting because a friend of mine who was over recently, something came up and I started to talk about something, forget what it was even. He said, I don't want to hear about any of that. He says, I know you're involved. And he says, that's fine, but I don't want to hear about it. No, I don't get angry. There's so many different people. There's so many different ideas, so many different opinions. I mean, it's like I would get angry. I mean, if I got angry about everything when somebody disagreed with me, I would be angry all the time. People have different politics. People have different sexual orientations. People have different religions. It's sort of part of life that we all have different feelings and belief system. And I just put it in that classification. I have 2 teenage boys, by the way, that are very accepting of my situation. And that's one thing. I would not expose my children to anything that would be dangerous or harmful to them. But I know they are very safe as far as my involvement with the program is concerned.
Mary Jo, so far in our relationship, and I see no reason why it would ever change, she's always there. Whenever I call. And I made, I think, one ground rule in the very beginning, or I think our second time we did something together, was that she should feel free to call me anytime she wanted to, that I didn't want to do all the calling myself. And I can call her at work, I can call her at home. Her sons are always very nice to me when I call on the phone. I haven't met them yet. And a buddy is just someone that's there. My parents, my brothers, sister-in-laws, they're doing all they can do. They don't know a lot about the disease. When I was diagnosed, I asked them to please not believe everything they read in the paper or hear on the news. My family's known I've been gay for many years. I think they accepted that better than accepting this now. You know, we are supposed to bury our parents. Our parents never expect to bury us. And it just clicked. And my parents do have a lot of fear about my dying, much more than I do. I was with my first buddy through the program, my first client. I watched him take his last breath. And even though it hurt, it was a relief. And Bruce was finally no longer in pain. He was no longer a guinea pig for hospitals and doctors. And he got to die in dignity. We took him out of the hospital at 12:30 on a Wednesday, and he died at 1:25, not even an hour later, in his own bed where he lived. And that was his last wish. And it was so peaceful and calm. And it hurt, but it hurt the ones that were standing in the bedroom. But at least it was finally over for Bruce, and he was no longer having to go through the pain and the drugs, and he was finally at rest. I lost my job last May. This last May. The company I work for, if they would have known what I had, they would have panicked. And my supervisor and her boss, I was honest and I told them, but I was working with what I would consider a very redneck valley suburbanites, and they would have panicked. They probably would have burned the telephone that sat on my desk. And there was only 2 people in the department that knew. They said I wasn't eligible for medical leave of absence, and I turned around and said I didn't ask for one. My doctor and 2 dermatologists have me off work first a week for a week, and then it turned into a second week. And I even bargained. I tried to barter for part-time, and they said no. They were going to start releasing people, letting go people, and which I found out has not been true. I'm starting the legal work against this corporation, only because I'd be a fool to turn down any money, but that's not my goal. My goal for starting legal action against this company is if I can help one more person down the line, and if this corporation has to make a change in their medical policy, my goal will have been met. And that's my whole goal in taking this corporation to court. My life has changed. I was crazy for the first couple of months, but then I knew the footwork that I had to do. I knew APLA, I knew Shanti, I knew Aid for AIDS. I knew I had to get myself out there and do the footwork and find the support groups where I felt comfortable, and that I had to register with APLA as a client, which was very hard to do because I was used to being a buddy and a volunteer. And it was hard for me to turn around and register as a client. But I knew that I needed to, and I have no idea what tomorrow's going to bring.
In a way, my motives are very selfish. I think most women have been conditioned to take care of. I'm a single person. My children are grown. And there's some good feelings that come from being important in somebody's life.
I needed a buddy because I knew I could not handle this all by myself. Someone that I could talk to about anything. I could say anything I wanted to, and it didn't matter what I said. It's very important to have one person, no matter how many friends or family or roommates are in your life. For me, it's important that I have this one person that more or less not going through what I'm going through physically, but can understand it.
I believe we need buddies because it's important for people that are involved in the situation to know that there'll be one person that will be there always, for sure. And to have the freedom to cry if they choose. To know that if they need a prescription picked up, as simple a task as that might be, that somebody will be there to do it for them if they aren't able to. Somebody that's not frightened, somebody that perhaps has a little bit of understanding, and basically somebody you can count on. Billy doesn't really take, Billy gives. He's a very giving, warm, caring human being. And perhaps that's why we've done well together. Both of us are giving in this situation, and I think both of us are receiving quite a bit as a result of that.